Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know we are on our pilgrimage here, but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here now to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. And we'll also do our chalice lighting right now. So let's see, Tony, could you take care of that at church? And I'll light one here while Cass does the reading.
Okay. Again, this comes from the UUA website. We light this chalice, which is the symbol of our purpose, to bring more love and justice into our world. We light this chalice knowing our congregation as a church dispersed across communities, not bound by walls, but connected through the web of life.
So now we go to announcements. So if you have an announcement, go ahead and raise your hand. Carrie, yes. All right, Carrie, thanks. Other announcements? Yeah, Lisa. Thank you. Good idea. Anything else? Tom. Okay, thanks. So the second Thursday actually is this Thursday, the 9th. Yep. Rick, go ahead. All right, thank you, Rick. Anything else? All right, I have a couple announcements. PFLAG meets at church on the second Monday of the month, so that'll be the 13th, a week from tomorrow. And next Sunday is daylight savings time, so be aware of that next Sunday morning. And next Sunday's speaker will be Chuck Morgret, and the title is Uncommon Sense, something to do with Thomas Paine. So that is coming up next Sunday. And the nonviolent communication class is ongoing. We're on week 6, so that's going well. We're doing that on Zoom. And if you wish to contribute to the church financially to help the operation of the church, you can do that by writing out a check and sending it to P.O. Box 331 in Tullahoma. Or if you want to make a donation, there's a box in the back right by the door. You can put your donation in that. Any other announcements? All right, we'll do a responsive reading and then move on to our speaker. So Cass and I'll be the readers here. This also comes from UUA. For the love of all began with the world.
All of nature is sacred.
Every creature is a thinking, feeling being.
And we are blessed with wondrous variety.
We are part of nature and of every being on the planet. What we do to one affects the many.
In this web of existence, we are each a strand. Our pushing and pulling moves the fabric of our world.
Each bird and insect, each fish and four-legged creature, all are our siblings.
Let us treat them as we would one another, with compassion and dignity, with understanding and honor.
The love that we show each being radiates outward, a beam of kindness and caring that can be felt with the heart.
And in turn, our hearts receive that love from each being, and it echoes onward into eternity.
So now we'll move to our speaker, and Lisa's going to read a little bit of a bio on Katrina, and then Katrina will have the floor. So Lisa? All right. So Katrina, good morning and welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Let me go ahead and share my presentation. Bear with me just a moment. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect. All right. So I have my little script here. Give me just a moment to pull that up. All right. Great. So again, good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name is Katrina. Thank you again so much for having me at your service today. I want to extend my thanks to Lisa for helping coordinate this and being so open to the discussion topics that I want to highlight today. I wanted to share some small facts about myself before jumping into today's presentation. Pretty much it's the same thing as my bio, but it has pictures. So um, my education background is in music performance and excuse me, information science. I received my bachelor's in music from Florida Southern College and my master's in information from Florida State University. For my day job, I am a youth services librarian at a public library in Central Florida, and in my spare time, a soprano soloist, as described prior. I'm married to my fantastic husband, James, and we just celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary. The picture to the right is from our vow renewal that we just had in December. And I have 3 fur babies, Butters, our dog, and 2 cats named Papa and Loki. So let's just jump into it. What is paganism? Paganism is typically used as an umbrella term to group numerous religions that focus on connection to nature, polytheistic or monotheistic worship, and draws influence from pre-Christian European traditions or the ancestral culture of the practitioner. Practitioner meaning the person who is practicing that faith. Nature veneration is a respect for the land that we inhabit and a sensitivity to the needs of those living off that land, like wildlife. Indigenous tribes are most notable for their respect and active protection for the land that they live on. While it still can be done for someone born in a metropolitan area, I can personally attest that it's a struggle for me personally. I live in downtown in an urban area due to having little access to an outdoor area that's not already occupied by buildings. There's also a sensitivity to the seasons, which ties to the practice of harvesting and crop growth in rural areas. For those of us in urban areas, it becomes a little more metaphorical. or at the very least, we change the kind of foods that we eat from the produce department. A pagan practitioner may have multiple deities that they worship and work with alongside their magical practice. Sometimes these many gods or goddesses share a country of origin, sometimes not, or the practitioner works with male and female representing deities to depict the balance and necessity of both aspects. A person may also opt for venerating their ancestors in lieu of a deity, or may honor both. Goddess veneration is linked to fertility and the source of creation, making this deity worship a close relationship for some people with internal reproductive organs. However, the act of goddess worship is not merely tied to the ability to create life in the traditional sense, and some goddesses are known for their ability to destroy or modify physical and organic matter, like the goddess Kali in Hindu tradition, who is both creatrix and destroyer. I also want to note here that the idea of a sacred womb is not applicable to all people who either identify as female or who have reproductive organs due to medical or biological reasons, or simply because they do not identify with the gender spectrum. In contemporary pagan faiths, the goddess is given a new platform in the face of patriarchal-based societies and religions, and she is seen as a source of freedom after many years of oppression. For me personally, I choose to pray to one goddess who, like many goddesses described in mythology, holds several epithets and abilities that draw me closer to her. Additionally, I just don't feel drawn to worshiping a male deity. Listed on the screen here are some examples of well-known pagan religions. We have Wicca, which is probably the most well-known. Druidism, which has Celtic roots in Ireland and in the United Kingdom. Heathenism, which is tied to Germany, Scandinavian roots. Santeria, which is Afro-Cuban, and Brujeria, which is tied to Mexico. So this list of religions are umbrellaed underneath the term paganism. Some people practice these particular faiths and are either born into it through family lineage, or they converted from Christianity or another major world religion to a pagan faith. Some don't and have created their own version of one of these traditions or even a mixture of their influences to make their own practice. One thing that I want to point out is that I am not the only pagan you should talk to. And this is because I self-identify as an eclectic pagan. This is a safe way for me to say that I don't follow a specific religion like Wicca, for example, but draw some influences from it to create my own way of worshiping my deity. The plainest way I can explain this is that I am but a small representation of the vast traditions in North America alone that make up pagan faiths. Everyone practices differently, and it would be disingenuous if I attempted to speak on behalf of those who believe differently from me. In the same vein of the previous statement, I will not be speaking on indigenous or diasporic faiths like Brujeria, Santeria, or Hoodoo, practiced in the US because I don't hold knowledge for those practices, partially because they are close to me as a white person. And for me, no matter the number of books I would read on it, it is not something I practice, so I don't feel comfortable speaking on it. So what are some misconceptions? One thing that I didn't mention here, and I realized that I wanted to bring up, is that I actually couldn't think of many modern misconceptions that come about today. And I think part of that is thanks to social media. There's a lot of access for people to connect with each other and discuss things openly. And so some of the things that I heard when I was growing up, which one of my favorite lines was, "So what, do you just pray to trees or something?" I don't get that anymore. But there isn't a direct line to practicing Satanism. Satanists follow a different set of practices and have more focus on personal will and power. Pagan faiths do the same thing, but there's a little more of a more of the nature aspect embedded with it. Now, there might be some pagans who practice it in addition, but I can't speak for them. Also, as previously pointed out, pagan faiths are based on pre-Christian traditions, and the idea of Satan was established within the Christianity, at least from my historical studies. So the other big misconception is pagans are normal people. We have regular day-to-day jobs, and sometimes wear witchy hats on special occasions. I don't always keep a broom with me, though. So This part of the presentation is going to introduce a potentially scary word for some, witchcraft. Witchcraft is closely tied to pagan faiths through ritual practice, where the act of manifestation is implemented into a ritual with the use of tools. The attached picture is from my recent vow renewal, where we held a full hand fasting ritual in front of friends and family. I have to say, just as another aside, when I originally got married, my husband and I had a blended service where it was partially represented by the Presbyterian pastor who was a part of the church that I sang for as a job, and a high priestess who came in on my behalf because we didn't want to make people uncomfortable. But this time we got to do a full pagan ritual, and I kept having to stop myself from crying because it was so validating to be seen by my friends and family for who I was. And my husband felt the same way because he hadn't, up to this point, been open about his own faith. So it's a really special moment when you get to be totally authentic, and is also kind of rare, especially in South. So ritual magic, like what I previously described, holds some actions that are similar to similar to rites conducted during a Christian church service. Offerings are made to deities and to nature and shared among participants in a moment of solidarity. This might sound like a communion. One thing that I also wanted to point out, just from sitting here and observing, your lighting of your candle, that is something that we do, that making statements and praying for global healing and love. Witches and pagans do that too. We all care about the same love that we want to share. Prayer is a universal act that even pagans do. I hold regular prayers with my deity to ask for guidance or to give thanks, but we'll take it a step further by adding offerings to my altar to express my gratitude, or use divination tools like tarot cards to establish a conversation. One fun fact I did want to share is that Christian witches do exist. A lot of witches still maintain their ties to their Christian roots because they still connect with it, and use the Christian principles to strengthen their work as healers or for their own personal needs. And they may also invoke saints or angels in their practice, but I'm not going to speak further on this because it's not my wheelhouse. It's not something I practice. In the middle of the screen, you see the concept of witch's pyramid. So you may have noticed that I'm sounding somewhat vague in my depiction of faiths within this community. This is intentional. While many pagans, witches, and other magic practitioners share tips and basic information on how to establish a practice, spells to create, tools to use, etc., there are still some aspects of our practice that we prefer to keep to ourselves, or will only share behind closed doors in group work. There's a concept that I want to share with you called the witch's pyramid. 4 tenets that a magic practitioner may follow: to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. These 4 words are tied to the elements: air, fire, water, and earth, respectively. And the final tenet, to keep silent, can be interpreted as the need to be dormant and rooted in yourself to rejuvenate. But I also personally interpret it as the need to hold some aspects of our practices as mysterious intentionally. Just like in our social media life, we don't need to share everything. It can just be for us. I also want to briefly talk about an issue within the pagan community with the topic of appropriation versus appreciation. Especially during the earlier conception of the neo-pagan New Age religious movement from 80s and even into the 2000s, borrowing or adopting practices from a culture that you don't understand or belong to is a regular occurrence among US pagans. Now, being in an internet age has made it easier for those cultures to come forward and explain that those acts are not for others to adopt. And on the other side of it, people outside of that world can share with their peers alternative ways to complete an action without continuing the cycle of appropriation. One of the biggest examples of that is the practice of smudging from indigenous culture. Smudging is a closed practice, and the term was used very loosely in the early 2000s a lot of the time. And the act of using white sage to do smoke cleansing in the home or in a ritual space was also used. White sage in particular was over-harvested due to the appropriation of the practice. And so there are some of us that are a little uncomfortable with using it now. Alternatives to it would be like using music or bells to create a vibrational sound wave that will clear the energy in a space, or using different herbs to do a smoke cleanse. The big difference is that you're not using white sage and you're not calling it smudging. That's one of the big aspects of it that makes it appropriative. So, but again, thanks to social media, thanks to platforms like YouTube and TikTok, people are able to talk about alternatives that you can do. An example of a great area is there's a store in Salem called House Witch that they stopped selling sage and instead offer home cleansing kits that have a bell. And so people can use that. Another alternative is using something like salt water as a cleansing spray or something like that. So now I can talk a little bit about my magical journey. So I'm not sure about you, but I had a religious crisis at 12 years old. I tried to determine where I belonged in this world, and in the end found myself feeling drawn to the moon, praying to a Greek goddess, and constantly touching trees in my front yard because I could feel their energy beneath my fingers. One day I strolled into my local library, visited the young adult section like I always did, but looked at the nonfiction books on this particular day. I saw a skinny book about Wicca and began to read, and it dawned on me that I was practicing aspects of Wicca without even realizing it. Since then, I felt that I was called to this path, but it has developed and changed over time, just like I have. I no longer identify as Wiccan, but I'm very thankful for where it found me. As a public librarian, I don't push my personal beliefs on anyone, but I can tell you the satisfaction I feel when I meet someone looking for books about paganism, witchcraft, or Wicca, and my staff asking me to step in, and then seeing this person feeling seen and relieved. Especially living in the South and being in a relatively conservative county, I still feel like a religious minority in my home. Meeting other people who are interested in starting the path adds another connection to the web underlying my town, and it is beautiful. While I was growing up, most information about neo-paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, etc. was only available in books. And if you lived in a conservative town like I did, that was very hard to come by, and libraries very scarcely had enough resources or chose to not have them at all because the books would be stolen. And this is actually something that still happens today. It even happened in my own library when I suggested that we get more books, and instantly the reference librarian said, yeah, but they get stolen all the time. And I said, they don't. you can still have them. So thankfully we do have more books. I was very happy that we got more in. So back when I was a kid, you had to have money to get books, and I didn't have any because I was a kid. And I relied on what I could find in my local library, which was extremely limited. And the rest I had to rely on intuition until I got a book that confirmed what I was doing was correct. Today, internet and social media make it way easier to obtain information, allows people to connect across the world and share their love of their faith and how they practice. Having access to people from closed practices expressing why they are concerned about appropriation of their culture helps us become informed, responsible practitioners, and we're able to strengthen bonds and respect for one another. One risk that comes with a platform like TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, even podcasts, just as with news outlets, is half-informed individuals passing off as professionals that perpetuate incomplete information. This even occurs with print books, where an aesthetically pleasing title might catch someone's attention, or a cheap book in the Kindle marketplace might be all that a person can afford, so they purchase something that could be lacking. Part of this can also be perspective. Maybe that author was raised in a familiar practice, so they're sharing what they know, or the person only read certain types of reference materials for their book, and those may have also been limited. As any good librarian would recommend, I encourage you to check for a bibliography at the back of a book. If it doesn't have one, that doesn't instantly rule it out to be be a bad read necessarily, but I recommend reading it with a hefty grain of salt on hand. If it does have a bibliography, determine how many of those books or articles are primary or secondary sources. Not only does this help you follow the mindset of the author, but it also helps you find more sources to read and be more informed. Regardless of the growing accessibility of today, some people, especially younger practitioners, may have limitations due to their physical location. The term being in the broom closet is sometimes used to depict people still needing to protect themselves in an environment. For me personally, I don't share my religious status when I meet new people unless I get a good vibe from them. And when I used to sing in churches, you better believe that I did not broadcast it openly for fear of judgment and difficulty in my workplace. In the last church that I sang for, it was an Episcopalian church. The rector knew that I was pagan and he respected it, but his deacon didn't know what I was, but knew that I was not Christian and had some issue with it. And so she was constantly encouraging me to go get baptized. And it caused a very stressful environment for me that I eventually had to go to the rector and file a complaint. I guess one thing that I do want to add about the misconceptions is if you ever meet somebody who thinks that someone of a different faith is bad, we're not. Especially pagans, we're really nice people. A lot of us just want to love and be loved and care about the people around us. And I think partially because we're more sensitive to the energy of others, we want to make a more comfortable space for everyone. And we just want that same respect given back to us. So this is a good time to talk about how to be welcoming to your new pagan friends. So spaces like this, your own congregation where you invite people to share their faiths, are thankfully becoming more regular in society. Most towns may have a crystal shop where they hold classes or open circles for rituals, and it helps create a sense of community for some of us who feel like we don't belong anywhere. You can also help create safe spaces in your personal life by just being welcoming. You don't even have to ask pointed questions about a person's practice. Just letting them exist in a space without putting them on the spot helps us feel more at ease. I really want to thank you guys so much. I went a lot faster than I thought. So I apologize. I thought this was going to be a lot longer. I think maybe I spoke too fast. But I do want to thank you for having me today. Before I go, I wanted to share a LibGuide that I created during my graduate program at FSU that uses their library resources to outline magic and paganism in North America. I encourage you to review it and the recommended reading tab for some book recommendations. If you would like a list of books that I used for this presentation, please let me know and I'll be happy to send it to Lisa. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you. All right, so now we will close with our traditional song as we leave this friendly place. Are you going to help?
All right. For those on Zoom, I guess it's best not to sing, be muted when you sing. And those of you in church, of course, know the song, and I'm counting on you to be able to sing nice and loud. Okay? Thank you. As we leave this friendly place, long to may the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. All right, so we will take a 10-minute break.
Oh,
So okay, all right. I was going to say a short break because she could
say like a 10-minute break. So 10 minutes. So come back about 5 till.
Okay.